Today on Bridges, my first guest is Lisa Bevere. We're going to take a look at her latest children's book, Lizzy the Lioness, and how she encourages children to ask for help when they need it. Welcome to Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. Today on Bridges, we have New York Times best-selling author Lisa Bevere with us. And Lisa, we're so glad to have you on Bridges today.
Oh, Monica, thank you so much for including me.
Glad to have you. Now, Lisa, you've been helping women, experience freedom for years. So you're speaking and writing, and now this is your first children's book. What led you to do that?
Well, my granddaughter, Lizzy, led me to do it. But it is so fun. I mean, really, Monica, I had such a revelation that if we don't actually model this as mothers for the next generation, then they're not going to get it. So what we need to do is we need to speak to both mothers and daughters. Mm-hmm. And I watched my sweet little granddaughter, Lizzy, wanting to be big. She's the third grandchild, seeing Sophia doing big girl things, seeing Asher do big boy things, and wanting to do it and couldn't. And I was actually at our church Christmas musical, and she was crawling across our laps. We all had like lit candles.
Yes.
And she was not going to hold. So I was like, this is dangerous. And I started to think about a story that I had read when I was writing Lioness Arising about wake up and change your world for women. I read this story, and it happened in Ethiopia, where a little girl was abducted, taken out of her village, and they were, taking her, beating her in the wild, and a whole pride of lions came out of the wild, surrounded this little girl, ran off the people that abducted her, and waited until the girl was rescued. And I started to think—
What a story.
I know, and it's a true story. Seriously, it's amazing. So I started to think, what if I made my granddaughter the littlest lion cub, and that she saw somebody at risk, and she was too little to face off with this scary thing, but she could actually use her voice to ask for help. And so I wove this story to actually have the understanding that Lizzy is empowered even though she's little.
Yeah.
And that no one's too little to not make a difference.
And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the book, and the book is called Lizzy the Lioness, is that it really speaks to us, even when I read it as an adult, that we can all use our voice, and that being brave sometimes means that we can ask for help.
Absolutely.
And that's a hard thing sometimes.
Yeah, and I do think that children need to know they have permission to do that. And there's a difference between, permission, like, oh, you can ask, and actually really showing them that that's actually the wisest thing to do at times. And so in this story, when she sees something that she can't fix, she realizes who can. And then her parents celebrate her and say, hey, little one, sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is ask for help. But I was also hoping, Monica, that the moms or the dads or the grandmother that was reading this book would realize the same truth for themselves, that they would realize, hey, asking for help is not weakness, it's wisdom. And it's okay if I find myself in a place where I need somebody to come alongside me, I need to know that I'm empowered to ask.
Yeah, and that is a message of strength, and it's a message of freedom, because none of us can fix everything.
No.
And Lisa, we live in a world, I think, especially for Christian parents, Christian mom and dads, there's a lot that goes on that's troubling.
Sure.
And we need good ways on how to model being brave and what brave looks like, because brave is not always being able to, as we're talking about, to fix or rescue. Is that part of the message of the book?
Absolutely. And again, it's popular to be brave, but being brave means there's going to be a conflict. It means there's going to be a problem. And so we want our kids, most parents nowadays, I'm going to tell you, there's a whole lot of fear. There's a whole lot of fear about raising children.
Yes.
And so they want to just hide their kids. They're like, I'm just going to homeschool them. I'm going to lock them in the backyard. They are never seeing the, outside world. But you can't do that with your kids.
Not forever.
No, you can't. And that's not preparing them. We protect them as we prepare them. Yes. And so this book is about protection and preparation. We want to raise brave, courageous kids who know the difference of when they can face something, when they need to ask for help. And so that was a huge thing for me with this book. We can't parent from a place of fear. because fear is a bad counselor. Fear will always get you to not do the smartest thing. And so we want to empower the parents and empower the children. You know, when my boys were little, and I have 4 sons, when my boys were little, they'd come home from school and I'd kind of be like waiting for them. And I'd pounce on them. I'd be like, so how was your day?
Yeah.
Is everything okay? And they'd be like, Mom, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But they kind of needed a little bit of a debrief period. And so, you know, when I tried to raise conversations before they were ready, they didn't happen. But it seemed pretty consistent, Monica, that as they were going to bed, one of them would wander into my bathroom, or as I was saying goodnight to one of them, they would just ask me to stay back a little bit, and they would unburden their soul. They would talk about maybe somebody that hurt their feelings, or maybe somebody had been through something and they saw something that really, you know, they hurt for somebody else, but they didn't feel like they could step in and do anything about it. So I thought, all right, tired parents, because I was like, why could we have not talked about this at 4?
Exactly, because you were ready for it at 4.
At 4, I had a brain. Right now, everything in my being says, sleep, sleep, child, sleep, because I want to sleep. And so I thought, if I could create a vehicle where in the back of this book, after we've already woven into them the permission, woven into there's danger out there, if we could actually create intentional conversations that the parents could have without thinking.
Yeah.
The parents are like, I barely know my name right now. So the parents could have these intentional conversations with their children. And with intentional conversations, then they can locate the need. And when they locate the need, then they can empower their child with an answer. So whether that's a person they can go to, whether that is the parents stepping in, whether that is just a conversation that needs to be had where you give your kids information, we're locating the need. You know, Monica, you and I were talking ahead of time that you are anxiously waiting for the day you get to be a grandmother.
Yes, I am. I am so excited. I'm praying for that day.
Your son's getting married.
Amen.
Are on their way. I'm grandchild greedy. I already have 4 and I want more. So I totally get that. And you know, sometimes I get really special opportunities with my grandkids. And I had taken Asher to like a karate class and Sophia to do Build-A-Bear, and I was driving them home, and we were in the car, and I realized, okay, I've got 2 of my grandkids right now. I have 4, but I have 2, and they're the older 2. It's time for a conversation. So I'm driving in the car. They're both in car seats in the back, and I look back and I said, so Sophia, is anybody ever mean to you at school? And she was like, no. And so I said, great.
That is great.
Great, that's great. And I said, how about you, Asher? Is anybody ever mean to you at school? And he goes, not at school. And he kind of left it hanging. And I was like, okay, somebody is mean to him, not at school. And I said, all right, tell me, who's mean to you? And he began to tell me this whole story about an older girl, a girl that was older than him, that had been bullying him, punching him. And I think he was ashamed because it was a girl punching him in the face, leaving him out of different things. And I knew that Sophia really admired this older girl. So I'm listening to Asher, but I'm looking at Sophia and her face. She's kind of like looking down and stuff. And so I said, Sophia, what do you do when this is happening to Asher? What do you do? Do you stand up for Asher? Or do you go along because you want to be included as one of the big girls? And she throws her head back and starts crying. She's like, gee, Mama, I go along because I want to be a big girl. And then she turns to her brother, grabs his arm, and is like, Asher, from now on, I'm not going to go along. I'm going to tell her no. And it was just this beautiful, adorable moment of maybe him not ever saying to Sophia how he felt, and Sophia able to say she was sorry, and this conversation. And then I actually got to talk to the parents a little bit about it and say, hey, I don't know if you know this is what's going on. You know, it's a little bit more than, you know, hey, he's tattling. I mean, this is how he's feeling. He's feeling very demeaned. You know, he's bringing it up to me, and I think this needs to be a conversation. And so, you know, I wanted this book to create those opportunities, because I think a lot of times when a kid is rejected or picked on, they start to think other people look at them the same way. And they don't want to share that with their sister or their parent or their grandparent, because they start to say, is there something wrong with me?
That's right.
And so I wanted them to have a free course as parents and grandparents to have this conversation.
Because we need to have the conversation.
Absolutely.
And if you think about it, how would a little child know how to even voice those kinds of things? You know, I think about the grandson that you mentioned, Asher, is it?
Asher,
how would he know what words to say? You know, when you feel stuff, it's hard to even know how to articulate it. We need somebody to tell us the story or to ask us the question, to give us the reason to say, oh my goodness, I'm scared, I'm bullied, somebody's hitting me. And I think about this book, Lizzy the Lioness. It's an opportunity, it's a tool, it's a conversation for parents and for grandparents. And I told you, Lisa, even as I read it, I thought that's right. Sometimes the bravest thing to do is to say, help.
Yeah, even if you're just asking the Lord for help.
Amen.
I mean, like, you can ask the Lord, but then sometimes he's like, and you need to go to that person.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of people right now, Monica, that feel like they have no purpose.
That's right.
And that if somebody just asked them for help, they would feel like their whole life was validated.
You know, and I've seen that so many times over the years that I've struggled with something, needed help, haven't wanted to ask, and I ask someone, and you see the light bulb moment in their face that they needed to be asked. And we think, well, you know, but they could have just offered to help. No, people need to be asked, and there's something that happens with that. So tell me how Lizzy feels about this book.
Oh my
what
gosh,
she thinks.
she loves it. I mean, she's totally loving the fact that she is a book centered around her. She goes through it, and every single opening of the spread, she points to her. That's me. That's me. I say roar. I say roar, and then she'll like roar. And I mean, it could be that we've empowered something we didn't even realize. Maybe for her it didn't need empowering. Maybe this is for the other children that will read this book. But no, she loves it, and you know, it's a third child, and it just made her feel so validated, so special. We have little videos of her going through it and she's smiling from ear to ear, and she's pointing, and the way Thomas Nelson set this book up with the different, first the illustrations are absolutely beautiful, but there's like little companions in the story, and she finds that companion, and then she tells us where she is and what she's doing and what her favorite butterfly is, and you know, it's just it's a very engaging visual book. I love the visual on it. I thank God, because I could not have drawn this. And I do think it's a story. And you know, and I was so glad that Thomas Nelson said, you know what, we really want to partner with something that, you know, gives mothers permission. Because here's the thing, you know, children don't follow what we say, they follow what we model.
That's exactly
and so if a mom is saying, you know, the most courageous thing you can ever do is ask for help, then the daughter or the son is going to be in a position to echo that back. And so hopefully that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. It gets the whole family talking. And that's, you know, we hear so much about bullying and about all of these things that go wrong, but this is a positive way to open and to get that conversation going. I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Monica.
It's been good to talk to you. So the name of the book is Lizzy the Lioness, and we'll have all that information up on the website for you. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
I am so excited about my very first children's book, Lizzy the Lioness.
Says this book is dedicated to my granddaughter, Lizzy. Very good.
I won't say why.
I can only imagine what it feels like as a mother today, that you might step back and say, this is overwhelming. I just want to hide my kids. Well, you can't, but you can equip them. And I am so honored to come alongside you and lend some strength, lend some grandmother perspective, create some conversations so that your kids can feel like they have what they need to face every day with courage and with strength.
Okay. All right, here it goes. Wake up. Let's go. The big lions were tired after a long night.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
If you're just joining us today on Bridges, we're celebrating children, and we're looking at fun ways to teach them and encourage them and inspire them. And in this segment, my guest is a children's author, Rebecca Klar Lusk, and she's local to this area. And I just want to welcome you, Rebecca.
Well,
so good to have you today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now,
it's an honor.
Your children's books are just absolutely delightful, and I definitely want us to talk about them because these are some really great books. I want you to start, Rebecca, because being a children's author wasn't really something that you had planned or desired for your life. Let's talk about the story behind how the books came to be.
Okay. These books
Actually, people ask me if I'm writing new books, and the truth of it is God wrote these books. I was the author. I just had a pencil and a piece of scrap paper in my hand, and I wrote these books years ago when I was going through a very, very difficult season in my life. My 29-year-old son lost a battle with cancer.
I'm very sorry.
And as many of the audience people know, and they've experienced these things, it's very, very devastating. I went through a very, very difficult time. My brother, who is the illustrator of these wonderful books, he would call me and tell me, just write, and I'll draw pictures. And we actually joked about it, but it was an encouragement to me.
Yeah, because he's not really an illustrator by trade.
No, not at all.
By training.
Right.
But this is a brother reaching out to his grieving sister.
Exactly.
To help you continue.
Right, to press on. I was not only grieving my son, but I was in a very bad situation in my marriage at that time. As Satan would have it, he would rather that my marriage also dissolve. So I was really in a battlefield. I went through a lot of counseling, many years of just trying to pull things together. And these little pieces of scrap paper that held these books, what I wanted, what I did in my grief, I wanted children to know Jesus, because as a mother, I knew my son knew Jesus, and that was just so comforting to me. So when I started just doing this, my brother and I talked about the world always wants us to be something, but the Word wants us to be what God wants us to be. So I started with animals, and one animal told its story, followed by another, telling that we need to be, and I'll just sum it up with the 4 books. So far, it says the world wants us to be tall, or says that we should be small, or strong, or smart. But God says, I want Jesus to live in your heart.
Yeah. And that is what God says and what the Word says. And I'm so excited to share these books and this story with you that Rebecca Klar Lusk has put together. And I think one of the things that it highlights is family and love and the hope that we have in Christ, that this family who experienced this devastating loss of a 29-year-old young man, the grief of a mother, the grief of a father, the grief that that brings into a marriage and a relationship, and how, you know, God really does comfort us when we mourn. But there are those moments that all of us wonder, is this going to be okay? Will we be able to continue? And her brother steps in. So I want to share with you these stories, but I wanted to share with you also the story behind the story, because we don't always get our prayers answered the way that we pray.
Exactly.
And what happens to our faith in those moments? What happens to our life? And can we recover from these things? And so as you see today, local author Rebecca Klar Lusk, you see that it may take a lot of hard work and it may take a lot of faith, but God is faithful. So I do want us to delve into the stories. You know, I came to know you when you came to a Bridges Studio audience.
Yes.
And you had to listen that day to, or you got to listen, I should say that way, to a young mom who shared that both of her children are cancer survivors, and yet you as a mom lost your precious young adult son. And that had to be such a hard day for you. When you reached out to me after that, I just have to tell you, I just thought, oh, I wish I would have thought to say, we don't all get our prayers answered this way. I wanted to celebrate that victory. I wanted to give hope to moms and dads. And yet there is the other side of that story.
Yes, yes. And it happens often, really, but that's just it. There is hope. And it takes time. It was 14 years before this first book was published. 14 years. They sat in a filing cabinet on scribbled paper. They were nothing but a buried treasure. And then I became a grandmother.
Congratulations.
And in that long journey of healing and processing, when my grandson turned 3, that's when I thought, why am I buying him books that other people wrote? I have something I can give him. And that's really where all of these things came out of the archives, off of the scrap paper. And my brother had not done one illustration to that point. He had just
like
always,
in his whole life, he wasn't illustrating books. He
did a lot of portrait drawing. He was into wrestling, so he did a lot of pictures of wrestlers, and then buildings. That was his thing, but never illustrations. Never this fun animated type.
Because
thing
these
for
are
children.
some great illustrations.
Yeah.
Like even I'm not a kid, and as an adult, I look at this. It's all about being tall, and I look at this giraffe and this illustration. It's like he did a wonderful job, and his name is Robert. Right?
Robert.
He's Robert Klar.
Yeah.
And
so we're R&R.
R&R. And to me, man, it just speaks volumes of brother's love for his sister. That he would take, a talent and use that to help you recover and to be able to share, because none of us think that we will lose our children. Like, that's just such an unnatural thing.
It's very unnatural.
And yet what you're saying is that despite all the grief and all of that, like, the hope that you had was that your son knew Jesus.
Yes, ma'am. That's what kept us going, and that's what I wanted so for children to know at a young age. And honestly, people ask me, what age are these books geared for? Each of these books segue into the message of salvation. There isn't anyone of any age that can't use the message of salvation. So, bring it on.
Yes, I just think even parents reading this to their children.
Exactly.
It's like, I look at this, yes, it's all about being tall. I don't have to stand on a stool. This is a giraffe. While others stretch and moan, I walk around being real cool. Yeah. And, it's a fun book and a fun perspective. And then you've got, a vocabulary section, which I just think is so nice for parents as they're sharing the fun of storytelling and watching your child ooh and ah over the story, to help that be, a teaching moment. And then you've got coloring pages. So it's like you thought of everything.
Well, that was God. and I am an educator by profession. So 30 years of experience. This is how God culminated that. I didn't know that this is how he was going to use me. And now I'm reading in libraries, I do homeschool networking, I've read in the public schools, because we're in that season of life where children are being so pressured to being something that they're really not. And they're being bullied, and they're being confronted about things. So when I get to read these, I get to teach children that they need to respect others for who they are and what they're capable of doing, and to not make fun of other kids.
Yeah. You're getting to do teaching of children, even beyond your educator days.
That amazes me.
Because children, like when you say that children are pressured and bullied, we see that as never before.
Yeah.
The amount of pressure, the amount of bullying. But there's pressure even from what you would think would be supportive sources.
Yes.
there are parents that pressure their children to be. There is
Right.
the pressure of overwhelming sports schedules, and that kids, you know, you got to get out there and you got to play this amount of ball and you got to win a trophy. And I don't think it's bad to play sports. I'm just saying that I meet children who I know are overwhelmed
Absolutely.
from being overscheduled. And the fun, like storytelling, is like low on the list. They're being pressured to perform like an adult would get tired at that schedule.
Exactly.
And here 6-year-old Johnny is trying to do it.
Yeah.
And so I say, look at you, Rebecca, in homeschool networks, public schools, and you're reading, and you didn't think that you had the strength to go on.
No, I didn't. I did not know. And even just being here today, I just cannot even tell you. Never in my wildest imagination would I have ever thought that almost out of the trash can, seriously, if you saw what these were written on, it's pretty pathetic. But God had a plan, and that's too when I look and go, His timing, because these books right now in 2018, here we are. They're so meaningful to children, more so than they would have been 10, 15 years ago.
Because the time is right
The time
for
is
this kind of
right.
fun and story and pointing children to faith and these great illustrations, like it's all of it. So we've got like less than 30 seconds, and you know, you've shared about the grief and that you almost lost your marriage, but tell me about the marriage now.
Well, the marriage is going strong, and we'll be celebrating 48 years in June.
Congratulations.
My husband has been an encourager to me. He's the computer guru behind the books, and my brother and I could not have done it without him. And I thank God for allowing my husband to open his heart and to see God working too in our marriage and in our lives. And we have 2 delightful grandchildren, which that's why we're in Tennessee. We're not originally from here. You can tell by my accent.
Wow.
But the books are dedicated in the memory of our son, Christopher, but in honor of our 2 very, very special grandchildren.
Isn't that
So,
wonderful? Thank you for
thank
coming
you.
today and
Thank
for
you.
sharing. We're out of time. We've got to go, but we say goodbye and God bless
Thank you.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
God really is your other half. God, He's the only person who can really, fill those holes and cracks in your heart that you're so wanting someone to fill.
It's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
Prayer changes things. If you need prayer, write to the address on the screen. Call 615-754-0039 or email prayer@ctntv.org.
The blood of Christ is the only cure. It gets down to the root of every single thing that ails us. There's not an addiction, there's not a generational curse, there's not any root of sin, there's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot cleanse.
Visit monicaschmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your event.